This will be the last session with me, and uh, like I was looking for questions from you in my email account, but there were none. So I have decided, based upon the feedback in the last few sessions, somebody was asking me that I haven't covered the statistical analysis, and I looked into the papers. There was a short note on mean, mode, and median. So I will try to cover that today. And then I didn't cover the stakeholder analysis at any point of time. That is a very important tool. So I will try to bring that and we'll discuss a case study. And meanwhile, you can put up any questions if you like to me. So will that be okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay, Arpita. Okay, so we will I will start with sharing my screen, and we will see the mean, median, and mode. Although that these are basic things, but still, I think an overview would be good, because then you will be able to write a short note on that. Although it is more of an arithmetical thing, but that is still required. So let us have a look at that. So there are three things: mean, median, and mode. Mean is actually averaging things. Like if you have a lot of data, it pays you to average it and tell the, like, take out some conclusions on that. So let us look at them one by one, and then we'll see what is the importance. First, we should know what is a mean. A mean is something which has a position quality which is midway, like it is between the extremes. It is a medium, and and, and the number means that it is a, it could be a geometric or an arithmetic mean, but for our purposes, generally we don't need a geometric mean unless we are studying some scientific data like growth of some bacteria or something. Otherwise, arithmetic mean is good enough for us. And the average value of a set of numbers, that is what the mean means. And if you have a large set of data, it will be very easy for you in the Excel sheet to just select the data and find the mean. In fact, in the Excel sheet at the lower base, the title bar, the moment you select the data, it gives you the count, the mean, and the average. It says average. In arithmetical equations, average and mean means the same. Huh? There's not much difference. So it is actually the average value of a set of numbers. It is easy to calculate. What we do is add up all the numbers and then divide by how many numbers there are. So that is easy enough. An example, I will show you by an example. Actually, if you say it in simple terms, it is the sum divided by the count. If you have, say, 30 units and the sum comes out to 3 lakhs, then 3 lakhs divided by 30 will give you the mean. So example is, what is the mean of 6, 11, and 7? What we'll do is we will add them up and divide by 3, because there are 3 numbers, 6, 11, and 7. And the mean that we get is 8. So that's easy enough, like it's for school children, but better to understand the basics first. Now look at these numbers. There's so many numbers, and they add up to 330. And if you count them, there are 15 numbers, ranging from 3 to 56, and in between numbers also. You don't need to sort them out or do anything. You just have to add them. So the sum is 330 and we divide it by 15. So we get 22. So the mean of the above numbers is 22. Now, another example is you can do it in the negative numbers also. For example, if you have quantified the attitudes or you have quantified something which gives you negative values also, then you can add up those numbers and just, I think you know the basic negative and positive addition. They cancel out. The positive and negative numbers cancel out. So 3 minus 7 would be 4. And 4 plus 5 would be 9. 9 plus 13 is 22. Minus 2 is I don't know. Yeah, 9, 7 and 2 will be added. So that is minus 9. 18 and 3 gives you 21. So you get 12 and there are 5 numbers and the mean is equal to 2.4. So the mean of the above numbers is 2.4. Although this number is not figuring, you might have noticed it in earlier example also. In this also, the 22 was not figuring there and 2.4 is not figuring here, but still that doesn't matter. It is the mean that you have taken out. Now what is median? Median is actually the middle number. Uh, and to find the median, we must first sort out the numbers. Like they should be arranged in an order from say smallest to highest, or maybe from highest to smallest. So if you have an Excel sheet and you need to find out the median, then it is a good idea first to sort that data in ascending or descending order. Mostly, in most of the examples, I have seen that it is in the ascending order. So we have these numbers 12, 3 and 5 and we put them in order from in the ascending order 3, 5, 12 and the middle number here is 5. So the median is 5. It is a too simplistic and example. So let us move on to another example which is a bigger. This is similar. The second example that I showed you for the mean, it is the same example. And now we put these numbers in order. So our smallest number here is 3. So we will have 3, 5, 7, 12, 13, 14, 21 and so on. We have put them in an order from smallest to the largest. Largest is 56 here. And now what we try to do is we find the middle number. They are 15 in total. So the middle number here will be the 8th number from the left. So the 8th number is 23 and 23 is coming 4 times here, but it doesn't matter. And 23 is the median for this data. Now it doesn't matter that some numbers are the same in the list. It does not matter. Even if they're the same, the median will give this value. Now, when we have an even number, that we will have a problem because it's easy to find the middle number in a odd amount of numbers. In the earlier example, we have 15, but if you have more numbers here, then how will we find the halfway in between? In that case, what we do is we add up the middle numbers and find the value halfway between them. So we add them together and divide by 2. So when we put these numbers in orders, for the example is in front of you. Now here you have 337. This is not in order and we put them in order. And now there are 14 numbers and we don't have a middle number. So we will find the pair in the middle. So that would be the 21 and 23. So you can find from here the middle pair and then add them 21 and 23 and divide it by 2. So you will get 22 in this median. So you noticed in 15, when the numbers were 15, the median was 23. And now here when the numbers are 14, it is 22. And now 22 was not here in the list of numbers. You must have seen that. But still the median is 22 and that is okay. Because half the number in the list are less than 22 and half the numbers are greater than 22. Now, what is mode or modal value? So we have done two things, the mean and the median. They're simple enough. Mean is the average, like you add all the numbers, divide by the amount of numbers, the count of numbers, you get the mean. And median is the middle value. And mode or modal is the number that appears the most often. Like it will be occurring again and again. For example, in this set, 6, 3, 9, 6, 6, 5, 9, 3, you see that 6 is coming 3 times here. So the mode is 6 because it is occurring more often. This is helpful in salaries and in counting marks, and when you have to find the cost of training, or if you have to find the how did our participants fared in the test or something, then it becomes like helpful. It is helpful there. To find the mode or modal value, it is best to put the numbers in order. Then count how many of each number appears most often. That will give you a fair idea. It is better to sort it out. We have another example here. In fact, the numbers are repeated here from the previous examples. And we have this set of data here. And what we do is we put them in an order. So this is the order from lowest to highest. We have put them in order here. And you are seeing here that 23, 23, 23, 23 is coming 4 times. So the mode in this set of numbers will be 23. Now here there's another example. 19, 8, 29, 35, 19, 28, 15. Now we arrange them in order, and you see 19 is coming twice. So all the rest appear only once. So 19 is the mode. There may be a situation where you have say you have 50, a set of 50. Data count is 50, and you have more than one number which is appearing, say 3 times, and you have a tie in between them. Then it is a difficult situation, and like you will have to find a mean, like either add them up and try to find which appears more often, or it may be having 2 modes then. Now, why should we be using it, and whether taking out mean is important or median is important? That is a question that cannot be answered very simply. Like if a data is given, can we just, when we are presenting it to the officers or in the organization, that our mean is this much, does it give you a clear picture or not? Actually, the main disadvantage of using the mean to describe a group of numbers is that it is extremely small and large values can skew the result. Like if somebody is getting a salary in millions, but most of the people are getting salaries in, say, in thousands, then if you take out the mean, that would skew the real value, isn't it? For example, in this example, the mean of the numbers is numbers 4, 5, 5, 6, and 40 is the sum of the numbers 60, and we divided it by 5, and which is 12. Now the resulting mean is 12, and it is a value that doesn't really reflect the majority of values in the group. This is a group of 5, and the majority of values is less than 6. So 12 is not actually a representative of this group, isn't it? And because there is 40, and 40 has actually affected the mean, because 40 is a very big number if you compare it with 4, 5, and 6. So every time just taking out the mean may not be a good idea in your data. So you need to have something else too. And let us compare it to the median. So here the median would be 5, isn't it? Now, which is the middle number in the group? Now, if we sort it, this is already sorted out, 4, 5, 5, 6, 40, and 5 is coming in somewhere in the middle. So 5 is the median value, and in this case, it gives a closer representation of most of the numbers in the group. Only one number is 40, rest of them are closer to 5. 4 is closer to 5, 6 is closer to 5, and this could be for this could be true for a bigger set of numbers. Like here I'm showing you only 5 numbers. It could be 1,000 numbers. It could be more than that. Again, the same thing could happen in a bigger data set also. So let us move on from here. Now, what would be an appropriate measure? Taking out a mean or taking out a median? So each measure may not apply to any situation. Huh? It's not necessary that mean would apply and it would give you a clear result. Sometimes it would be better if you find a median. For example, all the students do very good in a class and you want to find out the average grade on a test. So that is one way of eliciting information for evaluation of training, isn't it? And um, sorry, yeah, if you wish to find the average grade on a test for your class, but one student fell asleep and scored a 0. Maybe it was an online test and he didn't score much because he fell asleep during the test. The mean would show a much lower average because of one low grade, while the median would show how the middle group of students scored. So using these measures in everyday life involves not only understanding the differences between them, but also which one is appropriate for a given situation. We cannot earmark that median would be good for every situation or mean would be good for every situation. It depends on the data and it depends upon the situation you are in. So we cannot just generalize that taking out the median is always the good thing. So what should we do while presenting our data? So while you're writing a short note or you're saying something, you must explain the mean, median, and mode. And you must tell that using all the three to reveal different aspects of data is important. We must use all the three to reveal the different aspects of our data. Now, anyone will give you a general idea, but may mislead you. The mean may give you an idea, yeah, this is the average salary, but it may mislead. So having all the three will give you a more complete picture. So for example, for the data 5, 7, 6, 1, 27, you get a mean of 36.25. And this is a number that fits the arithmetic, but seems a little out of place, isn't it? The median 6.5 may have more relevance to the series, but says nothing about the outlier. It doesn't say anything about 127 or this. This is not such an outlier, but 127 is a big outlier here. Since the series has no repeated numbers, it has no mode, isn't it? Because there are only one occurrence of every number. So this also reveals valuable information about your data. So you will have to tell that there is no mode in this. That means we don't have repetitions of any of the numbers while presenting your data to the seniors. There is an example like how it is used, and for example, the Bureau of Labor Statistics defines the median wage as the 50th percentile wage estimate. That is 50% of workers earn less than the median and 50% of workers earn more than the median. That is how they give their statistics, and it is the center of a range of numbers, though not necessarily equidistant from the top and bottom numbers. It could be away also. It is one way statisticians define the center of a set of data using a number. Other measures used for this are known as the mean and the mode. You can use that. And this is one example of how it is being used. There's another example for you. A median salary shows exactly what a person precisely in the middle of all workers in an occupation would earn, because it isn't affected by the outliers. Outliers are those which are the extremes, like a value which is so different from other numbers that its existence can't be expected. In the same way, so outliers in the same way that the mean or average can be. Mean will be affected by the outliers, but median will not be, or average, that average can be affected. For example, in a group of 5 workers who earn $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, and $1 lakh, 10 lakh dollars, the mean or average salary of those workers would be $22,220, while the median salary would be $10,000. In such an extreme case, the median is a much better indicator of a typical mid-range salary than the mean. Although again, I would say that that is much misleading, because you have people earning $100 also, and people earning thousand also. So, but still, 10,000 is much acceptable mid-range salary than the mean here. Huh? So I think you've got a good idea of what this means. And now I will take you to something else. And let us do the stakeholder analysis first. And oh, so you are able to see the PowerPoint, I think. Okay,
Yes.
so that is another tool that is called the stakeholder analysis. Now, stakeholders are actually people. When we are talking about stakeholder analysis, we are talking about people who have a stake in the things that you are doing. If you're going to evaluate a training course, there will be people who are going to be affected. And the stage at which you are doing the evaluation will also affect the people. We will go on to stakeholder analysis, but I think Arpita or Shormishta, somebody asked me, ma'am, what is the difference between tools and techniques, if I remember correctly? So I looked up. Actually, I was using it interchangeably, but you can say that techniques are actually the ways of doing things, and tools are the instruments that you use. For example, pen is a tool, and when you write with a pen, you can do calligraphy with a pen, or you can just write simply sign with the pen, or you can just do sketching with the pen. So that is the technique that you are using: sketching, writing, calligraphy, and so on. So the technique is actually the way. So if somebody asks you to write down the tools and techniques, so that would be two different set of things. Tools will be like the questionnaire, okay? But how do you administer the questionnaire? That would be the technique used. Or technique could also be combined with the methodology. Some people ask you what is the method that you will use, or what is the tools and methods that you use. So I could say that if somebody is asking you technique or methods, then you can safely use those techniques like the models you have. This Kirkpatrick model, that is a method. The ROI model, that is a method. Or if you're doing the, for example, observation is a technique or method, you can say. So techniques and methods, I think you may use interchangeably depending upon the situation you are given and how the question is asked. But tools would be like the questionnaire, the interview, uh, activity sampling. There could be stakeholder analysis, that is another tool. Learning logs is a tool. SWOT analysis is a tool, and so on. So I think I'm making sense here, and that is understandable to you. So let us use the tool of stakeholder analysis, and the way we will be using is a technique.
Ma'am, sorry for interrupting. Another question.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
theory and models are same for evaluation. That means the same, right? Like a
Methods,
Kirkpatrick model.
methodology, and technique.
Yeah.
That is what I said.
Right.
That could be like used interchangeably. Actually, framing of questions is also very important. Like sometimes people don't give you a direct question. They go in a roundabout way to ask you the question. They wouldn't give you straight. Like you have to think and then apply your mind and then answer, isn't it? So that
So,
is
ma'am,
what.
is training needs analysis? That would be a technique of analyzing whether we are framing, we are finding out the right training needs.
Training needs analysis would be a method, and how you conduct it, like there would be like there are different methods in that too, sub methods you could say. And I think I would call it a method. You cannot say it as a tool because it's not such a small thing like
Right.
uh, although yes, you can't have very sharp and watertight compartments to put tools into and techniques into. And many people, many authors I've seen, they use it interchangeably. But if somebody is asking you tools and techniques, then definitely he's asking you to tell the methodology and also the things that you will be using. For example, your methodology is to obtain information at the reaction level. So your methodology is the level 1 of Kirkpatrick here. I'm just giving you an example. And your tool would be the questionnaire, observation, interview of the participants, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes, ma'am.
that is, I think that is the best I could tell you about it, not more than that. So I hope this helps you.
Yes, ma'am.
And
Ma'am,
so
Ajay
if,
Kumar Shukla here.
yeah, tell me, Ajay.
How good you conduct those quizzes, how efficiently you conduct those interviews, that would be the technique. And the tools will be the questionnaires, surveys, and all other methods. So I
Even
understand.
yes, I agree with you. Even in the questionnaire, how you conduct the questionnaire? Do you
Yeah,
send it to email? Do you sit in front of the person and elicit information from him and help him fill that? Or how you go about it is definitely the technique. Even in the interviews, if you go with a set of questions
hmm,
prepared, that is
hmm.
the technique you are using, isn't it? And the
Yeah,
tool is your interview.
yeah, got it.
That is a good example. So shall we move on from here, or do you have any other questions on this topic?
Ma'am, we can proceed, ma'am.
Yeah, we will go ahead and let us use stakeholder analysis. Okay. Actually, I said that it is about the people and there will be different perspectives. If you remember in the first session, we talked about 4 different sets of people, like the training institute people. There could be faculty members, there could be management people, there could be senior management in the training institutions. Then there's the client organization who sends people on training. So the line managers, the participants themselves, they are the stakeholders. And then it could be the senior management who are giving money, who are providing the budget. So they have different perspectives on the success or failure of the training. And it has to be seen from a variety of perspectives. So we have to consider their views, whether they are positive, they're negative, or they're just simply indifferent. It doesn't matter to them that whether your evaluation happens or does not happen. So what effect will these views have on decision making? This is the purpose of the tool, why we should use this tool to elicit information about how this is going to affect. Whether they will give us the evaluations assignment or not, or whether they will be agreeable with our report or not, or whether they will feel offended if we tell them something. So you have to tactfully use that, and you will have to see who will support you, who will put obstacles in your way, and who will be like people who don't matter, who will be going along with you. If the senior management is going along with you, then they will also go along with you. Otherwise, they would be simply indifferent. So for this tool, what we do is we explore the views of the stakeholders, and that can have significant impact on evaluation. So sometimes people will be holding information, and if they look at it in a negative way, they will not be diverging information to you. So that is why the tool is used. And there could be people who have a positive view of evaluation of training, and they're likely to become proactive allies. They will help you give information, they will help you give, they will give you numbers of people whom you can contact, they will give you documents, they will tell you where to go and find which report and where you will find data. So that would be a very helpful lot. So there will be different perspectives, and so elicit the different perspectives is the purpose of this tool, and that is why we use this tool. Now it can include identifying who are the stakeholders involved. Naturally, you need a list of people who are involved and who are getting affected. And you have to list out the evaluation of training issues also. For example, if you are evaluating at the reaction level, then what are the issues? Whether the training objectives have been met, that would be the main issue probably. If you're evaluating at the learning level, are the tests and going to test what we want or not? Are the tests addressing the problem that we started with? Are the tests giving you a clear picture whether the learning has happened or not? So that would be the key issue there. If you're at the third level, then maybe the key issue will be, has the performance enhanced, and up to what level? Where did we start from? Is there a way to measure it? These could be the issues there. And at the fourth level, again, it could be the impact. How in the long run has the organization really benefited from such trainings? So that these are the issues that we need to list out, and it totally depends on where you are doing the evaluation. It is not possible for you to do the evaluation at all the levels at once, but in your examination paper you may be writing it. Okay, so you may be writing a holistic view. I've seen there are general questions like you have to write the whole thing because it's an essay type paper, so it could be the whole thing that you will be writing. But in practice, practically, you will be only addressing issues at that level where you are doing evaluation. Then the third thing you need to do is establishing the views of stakeholders towards EOT initiatives. I want to remind you one thing. If you are identifying the stakeholders involved will also change from level to level, and the points on which you are doing the evaluation. If you remember, in the first session, I showed you, first or second session, I showed you a slide in which we talked about 5 points on which we do evaluation. So on all the 5 points, it will be changing. The stakeholders will be changing, and their views you have to elicit. So first 3 points are really important in stakeholder analysis, and mostly organizations do these 3 points. Identify the stakeholders involved, list out evaluation of training issues that we wish to address. Like the whole exercise depends upon that issue, and your evaluation goes around that. Establishing the views of stakeholders towards EOT initiatives. What are their views? Are they supporting? Are they neutral? Are they negative? Then 2 more things can be done, and that depends upon the power dynamism that is happening in the organization. And you can map the power of stakeholders that you have identified, and you can take action against the dynamism or predictability. In this way, predict whether they will be willing to help you or not. Who are the people who are dangerous? Who are the people from whom you can get the maximum support, and where you should channelize your energy. Then mapping the power of stakeholder to action against the interests they have to do. So what actions they would like to take. Mostly these two are more theoretical, which I feel, which I haven't seen many organizations doing. But the first three are really important. If you're able to do the first three, then you will be able to do a lot of stakeholder analysis, and rest of it, the last two will vary from one organization to another organization, and the uh, small politics and power dynamism that is there in the organization, that would affect it. Huh? So now when we have to identify the stakeholders, they can be internal or external. External will be, for example, people, if you're talking about the first level or in the training institution, during the training, the internal could be the designer of the training, the delivery, the trainer himself, the management of the training institution. They are the internal people who are straight away affected. And external would be the participants, or maybe the people in the client organization who have sent the people. They will be interested. Hmm? Then the participants themselves can be the stakeholder at level 3 also, learning level also. They can be the stakeholders, trainers delivering the program, managers of the participants, those who design the training program, then those funding the program, the managers of the training institutes, the departments employing the staff, even the support staff are stakeholders. Like you get more photocopying needs, you get more, the pressure on the training institution increases if there are more training programs, more photocopying, more cyclostyling, more logistics. The hostel people or the people in the canteen have to produce more, and so on. So they are also getting affected, although they are not directly involved with the training. This is a slide that is showing you something. Uh, this is actually, I'm calling it a planning and UT intervention. Like if you have to plan for a evaluation of training, then a complete thing is like this, that people already have some existing knowledge and skills, and then you decide that they are to go to this training indicated by this square, the orange square, and a person would be in an area A. Here, the stakeholders involved will be different. The participant himself will be the stakeholder, the client organization, the line managers, the people who are sending him on training, they will be the stakeholders before he enters. And the people who have performed training needs analysis, they will be the stakeholders here. And there could be different key issues for every perspective. The designer of the training would be the stakeholder. Then when you enter into the training, these people in the client organization, they take a back seat. Here, mostly the learner and the trainer would be the stakeholders when the training is happening. And when the person is going to leave from the training, then again the training institution management also comes into picture. The learner, the participant, and the trainer, the client organization is also a bit involved if they are interested in how the participant has fared, has he passed the test or not, and so on. And when he has come to the organization, there will be a different set of people who will be more readily involved, and stakeholders, the number of stakeholders will actually increase at this D level. So different people will be involved at different stages, and depending upon where you are evaluating, you will list them and you will see the key issues involved in the training. So different set of people might be interested in different things at these different A, B, C, D areas. So the thing about identifying the stakeholders is, some of them will be easily accessible to the evaluation of training team, and others difficult to reach, to gain their views or to seek information from the for evaluation of training. treated as individuals or groups. Like you can club the line managers and the senior management as one group, or so you can group them if there are more. If there are large number of stakeholders, it may be preferable to treat them as groups and only identify individuals in the analysis when they have high importance for the particular initiative. So EUT issues or key issues, that is the second thing that we need to do. The issues to be addressed through an EUT initiative need to be identified. This may depend on the level at which you are working or developing of your EUT initiatives. So, stakeholder views could be supportive, seeing the benefits of evaluation of training and giving whatever help is required. They could be neutral, perhaps also indifferent to evaluation of training, neither helping nor hindering your evaluation. They could be opposing, possibly seeing EUT as a threat, and they may be treating you as trivial. They may be saying that what work you are doing is useless and all that. Some people would be unsure, uncertainty, unsure of what to expect or divide, or maybe having a divided opinion about the consequences. So now let's have a look at example. For example, you can say that people who are supporting you, they can be indicated as plus. People who are neutral, they are indicated as 0. Minus are the people who are opposing, and question mark could be the people showing uncertainty. So what you need to do is you can make a grid, and you should include the internal people also and external stakeholders also. If you are at the institute level where training is going on, then internal people would be like trainer, designer, management of the training institute, and external people would be, external stakeholders would be the participants or staff in the organization. So they would be external. So this is the kind of grid that we make. We list the stakeholders. I have just given random alphabet, V, W, X, Y, Z, could be A, B, C, D also. So I have just given them this names like thing, and they could be internal, they could be external. For example, the issues at this time is you need to revise the IRQ. It is not giving you a clear picture. So the internal people, somebody could be positive. They could be a very enthusiastic trainer. Yes, do it because I want to know how we fare and it will give a clear picture. People in the management side in training institute may not be so happy about it because that would require cost probably and logistics also. And external people may be supporting it because they want to know the clear picture, what is happening in revising the IRQ. Then introduce
Ma'am, what's the full form of IRQ again?
immediate reaction questionnaire. Q stands for questionnaire, and immediate reaction means just after the training. Immediate reaction questionnaire. So you can have so these are the key issues that could be there. For example, designing objective test items, you measure the learning through this. So external participant may not be sure. Oh no, it could be like, I don't know what kind of exam would be there and so on. And the line manager may be neutral. Yes, do it. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the result. So and so on. So like this, there could be, what we do is we analyze their views and we try to make a grid. And then you need to see where you focus your energy to do what you want. That is what it is. For example, propose cost benefit analysis. Till now, it was not happening. So the trainer may be like very enthusiastic, the management could be very enthusiastic, or the management may be negative to it. They may think that it is like people may stop giving them more trainings if the cost is more. They may be afraid. So and so on. Like it is not true for everybody, but I'm just giving you an example. It could be. And here the client organization external, the participant may be very enthusiastic about it. Oh yes, do that. We are being sent to such a boring training and sitting in the classroom getting like tortured by the traders. So we should do a cost benefit analysis and so on. Even at the line manager may be very happy to do that and so on. So this kind of grid is made, and then you have to actually, the stakeholder analysis is for the evaluator himself. They can put it for the organization also, but it is more for the evaluator himself to see where he has to channelize his energies. So I had an intricate case also where you could find the stakeholders, but I don't think we'll have that kind of time because it's already 4:20 and I am allowed only up to 4:30. So maybe I'll skip that. You can have a look. I'll give you both the documents, the PowerPoint and the case also. I'll just show you the case. This is actually, you are the evaluator and somebody has come to you for an advice and they want to buy a video projector for training centers. Now you have to decide, there are many issues involved and you have to decide, and your task will be to identify the stakeholders, identify the key issues, recommendations and the actions that are proposed. So this is the way, if you wish, shall we spend 2-3 minutes? I don't think you'll require more time in reading this. Do you? More than 3 minutes? We'll
Yes,
just
ma'am.
spend 5
Yes,
minutes.
yes, ma'am.
Huh? Okay, just go through this. Are you able to read it?
Not now, ma'am.
We are stuck in the intro case one
Yeah.
slide.
Yes. It is, oh, I will have to share it probably. Okay. Actually, the file is open, but
Probably, ma'am, stop sharing this one and then again start sharing the other one.
all right, I'll do that. Okay. Share screen, and then I'm not very habitual in doing this actually still, although I have run so
Yeah,
many
it is visible, ma'am.
Done, ma'am. Done.
yeah. Just go through this. You are an evaluator and people have come to you for an advice. Now you're able to read it, isn't it?
Yes, very well, ma'am.
So 5 minutes reading time. I think you can see the task below. It is actually a letter, and if the proposal has been given, you are being asked your advice whether they should go in for a projector or not.
Ma'am, read it, ma'am.
Okay, all of you have read it. They will be slow readers too. So let's give them 1 or 2 minutes. So if you all of you have read this, then what you need to do is identify the stakeholders, identify the key issues, and you can make a grid like the one I showed you. You can write the key issues on the left side, on the vertical side, and you can write the stakeholders on the horizontal axis, and then you can write their views also, like what would be there. And then the last thing that you have to do here is give your recommendations on what is the action that you propose. So have you identified any stakeholders in this situation?
Yes, obviously the instructor who is asking for the OHP is a stakeholder in this, and the approver, the person to whom he has been approached. There is also mention of a funding agency from which a grant has been received. That could be a stakeholder as well in this case.
Yes, yes,
And
you have identified 3. Yeah.
mm,
What
all
about
the
the
other
people who undergo
all the
training?
other all the other centers also would be stakeholders, wouldn't they?
yeah.
Yes, definitely. They will be. They will be. And what else? Like, what about the people who are undergoing training? If they get a better view, if they get a better technology, then will it not affect them? Although they may not be directly involved in decision making, but like you can elicit their survey, they will also be there.
Yes, they are in fact should be the main focus, main key holder.
You
However, they
identify
never
4
have.
or 5 sets of people. So what
And the
will be the
person writing the letter also, right?
Indeed, yes. He's seeking their advice. Actually, he is somebody from the training institution, isn't it? Okay, so that you have already identified. So what are the key issues that you think are here?
The funds, the quality, the depreciation of the future readiness of the product that is being bought.
Okay. Anybody else? What is
absoluteness of the equipment. If it gets absolute in the coming 6 months or a year's time with the advancement of technology.
Also the motivation of the other training centers who may also ask for this costly equipment once they get to know. So
they will
there'll be
say
more
that
expense.
if it has been sanctioned for one center, why shouldn't it be given for? But looking at the current situation, the first key issue is purchase. You're all right, yes. Actually, in such situations, it cannot be one answer that is correct. This is actually a productive task. I hope you know the difference between reproductive task and productive task. Reproductive tasks are those that are in which you don't need thinking. That can be done only one way. For example, photocopying. You have to press a few buttons and that is the only way you can photocopy, or you have to print something. But how to print it will be productive. But for example, if you have to do make a painting, then that would be a productive task. If I ask all of you to make a sketch of an elephant, you have all seen an elephant, isn't it? But I'm sure Vinita's elephant will be different from Arpita's and even from Manisha's and other people, isn't it? So that is a productive task which requires thinking, and you cannot have a one answer for this. Even in such situations, this will change from one evaluator to another evaluator and from one decision maker to another. So we identify the stakeholders, then we write down whether they support us or they are neutral or they are opposing, and then we see how to go about it, and then um, their support against the key issues, like in a great form you can make it, and you can propose your actions and recommendations. So I will go back to the PowerPoint now, and you will get this document, so don't worry about that. And so the other ways are mapping power dynamism, and this is another analysis, but I've never found it useful. I will leave the PowerPoint with you, and you can always have a look at it. And it looks something like this, like you make a grid and you write the names of the stakeholders here, and then whether they have a low predictability or a high predictability. The high has shifted to this side, it should be above these two quadrants, huh? So high is here, and whether they have high power or low power, and this may be applied to each stakeholder. And in turn, like it depends upon, like we had the example X, Y, W, V, W, X, Y, Z. Each stakeholder will be having some kind of power in the organization, and whether it is high or low, and you can map that against that and see. It will be different in different organizations. It has a lot of like the politics that is happening in the organization has a high impact on such things, huh? So I
Ma'am,
think the first,
can you please show the slide before this for 1 second? Like, I just missed that. No, ma'am, the next one. The mapping, that thing was, this one. Got it, ma'am. Thanks. Thank you.
so you can look at the power, and which could be direct, they have seniority or status or control on the budget. It could be indirect, position within the organization, or some kind of influence. Some people have a clout, even though they may not be holding a very high position in the organization, but they still have influence, huh? So that kind of thing, that is what you need to map here. So let us move ahead. Then you can map power and interest also. People have high power, but they have low interest, so they will be happy with whatever you are doing, not much bothered about it. They have high power but high interest also, then they will be key players. You will have to satisfy them, you will have to be in touch with them, you will have to, at every step you will have to show them, because they are the key players. And if the people who have low power and low interest, you don't need to keep any effort on them. And people who have low power but they have high interest in what you are doing or what is happening, they may come into power politics. So you must keep them informed, you must keep them about your steps, what you are doing, what is happening, how much you have progressed, whom you have interviewed, and so on. So these are the things that is there, and this is more for the evaluator and not for the organization. So that is how we do the stakeholder analysis. This is, I have just given examples of V, W, X, Y, Z, and these are presumptions that I have noted here. You can have a look at it later. And so actually what we need to do by this is, we should try to maximize the positive and minimize the negative. That is what the evaluator's work should be. And who are the stakeholders likely to have influence on the evaluation of training initiative? That is what we need to do. Are some of them more important than others? That will tell you by the power matrix. Which of them should be included in the matrix? That is a very important item that you have to think of. Which issues within the EOT processes are likely to present problems, either to or one or some of the stakeholders? How do you make decisions about stakeholders' attitude? Try to base your judgment by talking to people and their peers, or if you have any documentary evidence that reveals their attitude, then how are you going to take this information forward? These are the things that you need to answer to yourself before you progress. So that is how we go about it. Your strategy, you have to plan out your strategy, and you have to convince the doubters. And what strategy will you employ to convince the doubters? How can you use the positive attitudes of some stakeholders to influence others? A tactic could be to gather a network of like-minded people. Hmm? And people who are like-minded and support you, they can help you shift the opinions. If they talk to those people who are negative in the organization, then they can shift the opinions. Then stakeholders who are neutral probably need less attention, although you should keep them informed. Perhaps by becoming involved in discussing issues, they will develop a more positive attitude. So if there's a meeting, inform them that we are holding this meeting, or whatever happened after that, you must tell them. So that is how we go about it. So the PowerPoints will be with you. I think Arun will be impatient. Is it nearing time? Um, so let us move ahead. And yeah. The PowerPoint will be with you. You can have a look at it. And it's not the only way. These are only examples that I have cited. This is not the only way to use it. Hmm? And you need people support. So that is what I wanted to talk about here. And does anybody has any questions other than what I have covered?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, tell me.
Ma'am, in the assignment that we were given, there was a question on for a group of 40 trainees, we have to prepare a training program and identify the ROI. There were specific 4 things asked: levels, strategies, techniques, and statistical and analytical methods. So I've got a little confused between strategies and techniques. Can we really split it? Because well, in the assignment, I really gave the entire
Strategy
explanation.
is something that you plan how you will go about it. So the strategy should be like if you're planning an ROI, the strategy should be to start from the beginning itself. Like obtain information for the training program from the objective state only. Then the reaction stage, then the learning outcome. That should be the ideal strategy for you. And then your strategy should also be in compiling the information. You need to compile data for the cost of the training, because the question is particularly related to ROI. So your strategy will be to obtain the data, and the data will be on the cost, on the benefits, and then your technique would be like that is the strategy, that the planning that you want to do, how you will go about it. The technique would be how will you do it. You have already a model in place, that is the ROI model, level 5, and you can go about by writing the formula, the technique.
Yeah.
So that is how it is.
Yeah. And ma'am, somewhere I read about assessment center. Is that also a method? And that would also come under a method, right? Assessment centers that we do.
Why do you need to put it under center,
Ma'am,
under method or something?
I mean, what
Assessment
it would
center
come
would
in
be,
which category is what I'm getting a little confused.
why should we categorize it as such? Assessment
as-
center, what I believe would be a center where you do assessments, I think. In what context was it asked?
Assessment center is when we do multiple mapping of using various tool, a candidate is mapped in a multiple exercises. That way it is assessment center. So it is a method of assessment only of a particular person.
And you call it a center.
Yeah, yeah, AC, yeah.
Where is it? Like
I read it somewhere earlier. Now even I can't place it because I've just written it as a question to ask. So that's why I was.
center.
Ma'am,
The
may
center,
I,
I
ma'am?
think, like a training center or something like that. So that
Mhm.
is why I was confused. Its center should be
It's
like
a
a
method of
building
evaluation, ma'am.
or it's a method.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Assessment is a method, I'm sure. Now you do, if you do it in a center, obviously, like I was confused in that. That center should be a place where you're doing it. Isn't it?
and ma'am, another thing related was in a training need assessment that we do. If a question comes at how to do that, we will have to take assumptions, right? Of what category of participants are there.
Actually, you should tell if you're doing the training needs assessment. Uh, Even I like it should be not a part of the evaluation paper actually, but okay. If
So,
you should
so
tell
ma'am, in the
that at
pre-training,
what
what will come?
levels you do, at what levels you
Yeah.
do, and you have 3 levels, and how you go about doing it.
Okay.
At the organizational level, you must match it with the goals of the organization and so on at the job level, and then at the skill level or the task level. So
So
how
ma'am,
you
in the pre-training evaluation, what all will come? If you can please
in
once more.
pre-training evaluation, there will be tests, there will be questionnaires, there can be surveys, there can be interviews too. You can use them in pre-training evaluation, and you can actually, what you need to do there is you need to test the entry behavior. That is just before the training. Otherwise, pre-training evaluation in
Okay.
a big way means training needs analysis too.
Got it.
If you remember, I showed you a slide in the first day, that is systematic approach to training. And I said that although we have categories of stages, like we have it divided into 4 stages, but evaluation is everywhere. Even in the first stage, training needs and assessment, the evaluation has to
Right.
be, that is pre-evaluation training is a big chunk of it is training needs analysis also,
Got it.
because it is a very general question. Pre-training evaluation would involve, if somebody is talking only about evaluation, that would mean various assessments that you need to check the entry behavior of the participants.
Got it.
But if you're talking in a general way, then a big part of it is the training needs evaluation, training needs assessment also. And that is like depends upon the amount of marks or the size of the question. If it is a short note, then naturally it will be just the methods that you use to assess the entry behavior. Otherwise, if it is a big question, then naturally the training needs assessment also.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes. Anybody else?
Ma'am, hi, this is Manisha.
Hi, Manisha. Tell me.
Ma'am, what is the difference between training measurement and training evaluation?
There's not a very big difference. People do use it as interchangeably also, but measurement is when we are trying to quantify things. Okay. And
Okay.
it specifically, for some people, specifically it means return on investment or cost benefit analysis.
All right.
It also means like measurement could be qualitative as well as quantitative. So when we are talking about money and numbers, then we are doing the quantitative measurement. And a large chunk of training is qualitative also, where you see the quality of work that has improved, quality of training that has been given, quality of assessment, like learning that has happened, quality of transfer of learning that has happened.
All right. Okay. Ma'am, any possibility that we can have any sample of cost benefit analysis if possible?
I gave you in one of the slides, in one of the PowerPoints. It's already there. Cost benefit analysis is just cost, the ratio of cost and benefits. And when
Okay.
you give it a percentage, it becomes an ROI percentage of that.
All right. So the linkage between these three. Sure, ma'am. Ma'am, can you also throw some light on end term evaluation?
Term evaluation.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, term here means, I think, the term of the training or the course that has happened. And term evaluation generally means giving tests. It could be summative assessment, it could be formative assessment.
Okay.
You're just giving them, it could be interview also, it could be objective test item, written examinations, it could be oral examination, it could be generally a feedback also. But end term assessment, when people say, they mostly mean the examinations that they will put. And in many of the trainings, it is summative. Summative means when you declare that he has passed or failed the training.
Got it, ma'am. Thank you so
Formative
much.
means it is like you don't fail or pass, you just give them peer checking or something.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Got it, ma'am.
Ma'am, amongst the books, which one do you recommend? Because your notes are really comprehensive and useful. But in addition, which book would you recommend as the best one to go through?
Evaluation of training. There is a measurement effectiveness of training. Otherwise, you can read Kirkpatrick's book also, Evaluation Methods. Kirkpatrick's, where he has discussed the model. That is the best book, I think, I would say. But that would be very difficult for you to read it. You have so many papers. And for passing the paper, you don't need much. You already have what you need. Anybody else? So I think we can call it a day now. Or is there a question by someone?
Ma'am,
Ma'am, tools and methods. I missed out the difference between the tools and method. There is one question which was asked.
Okay, tools are, I'll give you one example. A pen is a tool, okay? And the way you use it is the method or the technique, okay? I can't differentiate much between method and technique. And technique or method I am using interchangeably. And the tool is the pen. You can use it by, like in writing, just simply writing. You can use it to do calligraphy. You can use it to do sketching. So the way you use it is the technique or method, and the tool is the instrument. For example, questionnaire is an instrument or a tool, okay? And this tool can be used to either give written, elicit written information, or you can just take this with you and ask people. You can send it through email, you can give it in paper. That is the way how you use it. You can make it big, you can make it small. The tool could be like technique used could be open-ended questions. You can use, say, closed questions. For example, test is also a tool. You can give objective test items. That is the way, that would be the technique. And in the test, you can give an oral test. That is again a technique.
Ma'am, I would like to add a small example here, if you permit me.
Sure. Please tell me.
Ma'am, in cricket, the same bat is there in the hands of Sachin Tendulkar and the same bat is in the hands of Dhoni. So the bat or the pen that you are saying, it remains same. The tool remains same. But the way you defend each and every ball, are you defending? Are you hitting a 6? Are you hitting a 4? Or are you hitting to get caught out? So it is the technique that we can say.
Thank you. That is an excellent example. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
So all the best to everyone, and you fare well. Keep yourself cool. That is the best way to write an exam. Use your background knowledge, and you'll be able to write everything. Okay.
thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.